Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yata Sarvani Bhutani Pratibhanti Stitani Cha Yatraivo Pashamam Yanti Asmai Satyatmane Namaha. So, Mark, do you remember where we are in our text?
On page 171, number 1617.
Did you get that, Ganesh?
Page 171.
Yes. Help us out, please.
Bhutani yat anantani tarangini tarangavat utpatyau utpadyaliyante tat sansakti vijrumbhitam. Infinite number of beings repeatedly spring up and vanish as waves on the sea. Such a thing is displayed on account of close attachment.
So he's been talking about what is this world and how has it come about. And the image here is like waves on the ocean. The waves just rise and fall. There's froth and stuff like that. But it's nothing but the water appearing as the waves. Ernest Holmes uses a wonderful metaphor that I like, that consciousness is like a great sea of water and the names and forms are like ice. The ice cubes are nothing but water grossified, brought down to a lower vibratory level. And if they're in water, in time they're going to melt. That's what happens to every name and form. So Yogavasishtha, again to review, addresses three questions. First, who am I? Second, what is this world? What we're dealing with now is how has it come about? The world is not created. It is in consciousness. All this becomes very easy to understand if we go to the dream state. You are the God of your dream. In the dream state, your mind manifests as a body from which you have a locus of perception with a dream ego, viewing a dream world, dream thoughts and feelings. You people your dream with all sorts of characters. So the infinite Lord does the same. All this is like a very long and vivid dream. But just as the ocean itself is never harmed or altered by the waves, the self in you, and listen carefully, the self in everybody else is not really touched by. This is why Krishna is able to say in the 2nd chapter, in the 11th verse, you grieve for whom you should not grieve. Though you speak words of wisdom, meaning you've understood the worldly stuff reasonably well. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. That's hard teaching. We don't give it to beginners. This is not a beginner's text. Any thoughts or questions about this? Next one.
Sansakti vividha prokta vandhya vandhya charaghava vandhya sarvatra mudhana vandhya tattvavidam nija. Attachment is said to be of two kinds, Raghava, the barren or useless and the commendable. The barren one is one of the foolish everywhere, and the commendable one is innate to knowers of truth or reality.
Yes. So here is a great secret. Frequently, as we initially study yoga scriptures, the Vedanta, we get this idea that we need to be free from attachments. Well, I have news for you. The mind needs to attach to something. It's its nature. Our problem is, what do we attach it to? If we attach it to the phenomenal world, thinking that's where I'm going to find something that's real and enduring, we're constantly disappointed. But when the mind comes home and abides in the self, we don't really call it attachment. We call it, wait for it, yoga. Yoga means union. What gets united with what? Listen carefully. Yourself is not separate from God, it then gets united with God. Yourself doesn't get glued on to Brahman. It is the mind that is yoked to the self. Now, let's see how he goes on with this in the following verses. Going on.
Atpatatvavabad bodhena tena dehadivastuja bhuya samsara saktiya dridha bandhyeti kathyate. Bereft of the knowledge of the true nature of the self and caused by objects like the body, that firm and very great attachment to worldly life is declared as barren.
Yes. So because of spiritual ignorance, avarana shakti, veiling power, the mind projects an ego and a world, vikshepa shakti, and takes it as real. And with that, the mind then continues to superimpose upon the self a qualities of the not self. I think I'm my body. I think I'm my personality. And then I externalize my self nature into the world. Over there is existence separate from me. Over there is independent sentience. Ganesh is separate from me, and a sentient being other than me. Most devastating, over there is happiness. Technical term for this is anyonya adhyasa, mutual superimposition. And the more the mind extroverts and externalizes into the world, the more we're caught up in an addictive relationship with the world of name and form, and more unhappy we become. Any thoughts on this? So that's the barren or futile, mainly because actually in the end, the objects of the senses aren't bad. They're just void. It's fake. There's nothing real in it. Next verse.
Atmatattva-avabodhena satyabhuta vivekaja vandya hi kathyate saktihi bhuya samsara varchita. Their attachment is indeed declared as commendable, which is born of the discrimination between the truth or reality and the world made of the five elements, on account of the knowledge of the true nature of the self. It is destitute of the course of worldly life again.
Yes, so we can look at it from various levels. In the beginning, Kathopanishad introduces two technical terms, Shreyas and Preyas. It says two paths approach a person. Shreyas, the good. Preyas, the dear. Swamiji used to say the electable and the delectable. So the wise person is not tyrannized by the indulgent quality of the mind, but instead pursues what is truly good. And later on, Yogavasishtha will say, in the beginning, it hurts, it's unhappy, the mind, and I don't have my toys anymore. But then it rejoices at the freedom. I think a classic example of this is, say, take an alcoholic who's hitting bottom just before they quit drinking. Their life is a total train wreck. Someone says, why don't you give up drinking? They say, it's my last friend. If you had my life, you'd drink too. I can't give it up. But then if they move forward and get into recovery, oh, it's tough going in the beginning. It's very, very tough going. That first 30 days is very difficult. But in time, the craving for the alcohol goes. All of a sudden, your relationships start to improve. Health improves. People start to trust you again. It gets better. So it is with the world itself. I'm convinced I give up my attachment to the world, I won't have any fun anymore. That's not true. It's not true at all. But in the beginning, the mind will grieve the loss of what it used to value. Any thoughts on this? Frequently, as we start on the spiritual path, we begin to get to a point where we may go out and spend time with our old friends, and we realize that our values have changed. I'm not particularly into gossiping all the time or tearing down the boss at work. I don't want to go out on Friday and Saturday night and get drunk with my coworkers. You know, that old extroverted way of living just isn't appealing anymore. It's not that it's bad, it's just boring. We're beginning to find a new playground, something new. All right, next verse.
Brahmatya Lokapalascha Pandyasakti-yuta Smritaha. Brahma, the creator, and others, and the guardians of the world are regarded as endowed with attachment which is commendable.
So these celestial beings, they have a desire for the good of the world. They have attachments which are commendable. So what they're implying here is we go through a stage where we give up negative or misery-producing desires for ones that are more auspicious. Subhecha, auspicious desire. That becomes the engine for our spiritual practice. Those of us who've studied Viveka Chudamani, we go through the 4 qualifications of a fit student. What's the 4th qualification? Anybody remember? Silence. Mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation. This is this auspicious desire, this auspicious attachment. Am I still online?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just everybody's very quiet. All right,
I can
next.
hear you. Yeah, we're good.
Sarvada sarvasamsthena sarvena sahatishtata sarvakarmaratenapi manah karyam vijanata nasaktam iha cheshtasu achintasu navastushu. The mind ought to be made unattached to actions here, to thoughts and to objects as well by the intelligent one, even though engaged in all actions, situated in all ways, at all times, and living with everyone.
So, what do we mean by this? Some people misinterpret these kinds of verses and think that what they're supposed to do is nothing. I remember I had a student for a very short time, and he was living with his grandmother. And the reason was he didn't want to create any karma, so he did as little as possible. And that's not freedom. That's not freedom. In some way, it's being afraid of the world. But what we do want to do is smash the idea that what's wrong with my life is something out there. I'm in the wrong house, I live in the wrong city, I have the wrong husband or wife, I have the wrong job, I have the wrong friends, I have the wrong body. I'll be happy when it'll be better if. That's a huge illusion. It's like the story of the emperor's new clothes. Everybody believes it. They're unwilling to admit that it's not working for them. So what do we do with our behavior? You do your duty. We have what we call prarabdha karma, the karma of the body itself, where you today are situated in your life, where you live, your spouse, or if you're single, the job you have. Do your duty. Do your duty because it's appropriate to do your duty. Doesn't mean we don't aspire for advancement at work or stuff like that, but we've let go of the idea that that's what life is about. Frequently, many of us are unhappy with our lives. We're discontent. And we think, well, I've tried Pilates and I've tried aromatherapy, maybe meditation will work, or the spiritual life. It's like another technique that may fix me so my life will be okay. No problem. Nobody starts the spiritual path with pure motives. But somewhere along the line, we realize we're not taking on a spiritual practice so that my external life is going to work better, but rather the goal of my life is moksha, it's freedom. And the circumstances of my life, what Ram Dass called grist for the mill, that's the stuff that my karma has brought to me to work through. And it's always the same lesson. Let go and keep your heart open. Very simple. So right where I am is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Bring ourselves into present time. You don't have to like it. You gotta quit fighting it. You cannot do what you love. Work on loving what you're doing. And everything that becomes useful for the yogi. If the bus is late, it's a chance to practice patience. If your boss acts like a jerk, it's a chance to practice tolerance. If your 401k crashes, it's a chance to practice acceptance. Everything in the world that comes to us then becomes an opportunity for my yoga. Nothing, no event, no circumstance is wasted then. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
kevalam chiti vishramya kinchit chetyavalam vyapi sarvatra nirasamiva tishthatvat tishthatvatma rasam manaha. Reposing in pure consciousness alone, even though resorting to cognized objects to a certain extent. Let the mind abide in the delight of the self as if it were tasteless everywhere else.
As if what?
As if it were tasteless everywhere else.
Oh, yes. So the yogi wants to cultivate experiencing the juice, the taste, the rasa of the bliss of the self, my own self nature. In Vedanta, we talk about the three ways, I lied, that we experience the bliss of our self nature. The first is the mediated way, through a medium. When I dance with an object of the senses, desire and the object of desire become one. Yeah, a point of pleasure. My foolishness, I think it's the object. What I've actually done is for a moment get my mind to stop the craving, stop the longing, stop the thirst. We experience it deeply in deep sleep. Everybody loves deep sleep. You wake up in the morning like, oh, I slept so soundly. I feel so good. What object has caused the pleasure of deep sleep? Nothing. It's the absence of the craving mind. And then one of my favorite states, Vasanananda, Vasana Ananda. I call it snooze alarm bliss. Wake up in the morning and maybe the alarm goes off and you need it to get 10 more minutes. Punch the pillow all over. Oh, gee, I don't want to get up yet. I just want to. There's just enough mind there to enjoy. What? No object is causing it. And if you're like most of us, then the mind starts its thing. Oh, I've got this report I have to deal with today. Or, oh, my wife is so pissed at me. I've got to deal with that before this evening. Or, oh, I have to pay those bills. Or, oh, what am I going to do about the car? You know, the world. And then what happens? The bliss recedes as the mind returns. Third place, when we have the non-mediated, immediate, conscious experience of the bliss of my own self-nature. Goes by many names. Atmaramana, Ramananda Rasa, the juice, the bliss of Brahma. Samadhi, various different kinds of samadhis. Some of the advanced scriptures say, and now you must renounce samadhi. Yes, but don't give up, renounce something you haven't got. I renounced being Queen of England this morning. never going to be Queen of England. Not going to happen. So the value of experiencing the bliss of your own self-nature is that it's pure, it's clean, it has such a sacred, holy quality about it. And wherever you go, there you are. It's always available. It's free. You don't have to look your best, and it won't rot your liver. No downside. And because the mind will pursue the experience that's given it the greatest joy, thank God, God is the most beloved. Because the more we can revel in the self, the easier it is to let go of the world. So people who study Vedanta, read all the books, but who do not have a meditative practice, chances are you will not be very successful in letting go of the world. Any thoughts on this? The more you let go of the world, the greater your peace. The easier it is to abide in the self, to revel in the self. Call it the teeter-totter. Greater my attachment, the less my serenity. The more I let go, greater my peace, greater my peace. You choose. Next verse.
Tatrastho vigata sango jivo jivattvamagatah yavaharam imam sarvam nakarotu karotu va. Abiding there in the pure consciousness, free from attachment, the individual soul or individualized consciousness has arrived at this state devoid of individuality. In such a state, let it do or not do all this action or work. It is of no consequence.
Yes. So last night, we had people hang out for an hour after Gita. And there was a woman who's comparatively new. She's come in these last chapters, which are all about valuable techniques for stuff to do and don't do in the world, but not the highest stuff. So I took her through, and the class itself, very quickly through Jnana Yoga's principal meditative technique, discrimination between the self and the not-self, between the seer and the seen. Very simple. It was like a game. Rules of the game are you are the subject. Anything you can be aware of is the object. I said, you see the candle on the table? Yeah. Are you a candle? No. You're the one looking at the candle. Can you hear the traffic? Yeah. You're not the traffic. You're the one who hears the traffic. And then to the body. When you were a child, you had a little body. Through adolescence, the body is changed. Now you're an adult, the body is changed again. But you are the knower of changes in the body. Take a deep breath. Feel the breath in the body. You, in fact, know the breath in the body the same way you do the candle in the breath. The same going through the energy and feelings. You are not your feelings. And thoughts. You are not your thoughts. He said, now with your mind very poised, introvert the attentive faculty. See if you can notice who or what sees the thoughts and the space between. See, there's nothing there. You can't find this thing called a person. All that's there is pure consciousness. Chid Akasha, the space, the sky of pure awareness. Never moves, never changes, it's never born. But you and I must over and over again keep bringing the attention back to who am I? So I'm convinced that I am that. So I have clear discrimination between that self that's always there and the phony self, the shadow self, the ego. Chit Chaya, a shadow of consciousness. Pratibimba, like a reflection in a mirror. Now, when you are rooted in this knowledge, all the ignorance, all the various vasanas have been rooted out. Then let the equipment, the upadhis, do as they will, compelled by their own force of the past, the desires of others. The man of wisdom doesn't matter what he does. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no improvement. Then something very wonderful happens. When he's given up all personal agendas, then the Lord can use that equipment. It's amazing what will happen. This is what Jesus meant when he said, I of myself do no thing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. So this is what is implied by this abiding in the self, being absorbed in pure consciousness. And you watch the equipment, the body, mind, intellect, just do its thing in the world. No concern. Any thoughts on this? Now, many of you who may have studied the teachings and the life of Ramana Maharshi. So when he was 16, he had news of a school chum who had died. He had this illogical fear that he was going to die. So he goes home and he questions who dies. He lies on the floor in his house. He goes through this subject-object discrimination and has a deep samadhi. But then he goes off to Tiruvannamalai, lives in the crypt of a temple for 11 years. And many of the biographies say seeming toughness, just deepening self-abiding, not letting the mind extrovert at all, giving up. He was in silence for that 11 years. I think he might have been in silence longer than that. Can't remember. Do you know? It's a long time. Years. First, they thought he was a crazy kid. Then finally, they began to see what the depth of his luminosity. All right, next verse.
अथवा तमपि त्यक्त्वा चेत्यांशं शान्तचिद्धनः जीवः तिष्ठतु संशान्तो ज्वलन्मणिरिवात्मनि. Or else, having abandoned even that part consisting of the perceived world of objects and remaining as a tranquil and full consciousness, let the individual soul stay thoroughly calm or satisfied in the self as a shining jewel. Note, the individual soul is likened to a shining jewel in the great splendor that is the undivided and pure consciousness of the self.
So, meaning this intellect, this vijnanamaya kosha, becomes clear and crystalline. Then pure Shakti can move through. Divine wisdom pours through. God-inspired action pours through. What is the difference between a Mahatma and the axe murderer? Listen carefully. Both are Brahman. The self in both is Brahman. The material part of the body, mind, intellect is also Brahman. Everything is Brahman. There's a big difference between the Mahatma and the axe murderer. Their minds. The mind of the axe murderer is filled with tamas and rajas, anger, fear, vengeance, resentment, abuse, and that motivates his destructive behavior. The Mahatma has shunya chitta. Chitta means the stuff of the mind. It's shunyata. It's empty. So, which allows God's stuff to come through. Next verse.
एषैव राम सौषुप्ति स्थिति अभ्यासयोगतः प्रौढा सती तुरीयेति कथिता तत्त्वकोविदैः. Rama, this is exactly the state of profound repose. When it is fully developed or perfected as a result of practice, it is described as the turiya, or the fourth state of consciousness, transcending the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep states, by people learn it in the truth principle.
So this term turiya comes from the Upanishads, and it can be interpreted in various ways. Here, Yogavasishtha is defining it as a fourth plane of consciousness. You and I go through three ordinary states: waking, dream, and deep sleep. He says here the Mahatma has this other plane. He lives. The other way of looking at this term turiya, which comes from Mandukya Upanishad. Turiya is another name for yourself. Turiya literally just means the fourth. So it's in Gaudapada's Karika, in his gloss, he says it's not like the four legs of a cow: waking, dream, deep sleep, and a fourth state, turiya. No. It's the fourth in our sequence of discussion. It's the fourth, the way 4 quarters make up an hour. Meaning, what is that consciousness? Aham, I, in which all mind states occur. I prefer that second definition of turiya. Turiya is another name for the self, which is beyond the waking, dream, and deep sleep states. It's beyond samadhi. It pervades all mind states. When all the mind states are gone, it remains. Next verse.
Jivan Mukta Samacharaha, the conduct of those liberated while living.
All right.
yastu tasyam avasthayam sthitim prapya vinashinim anandaikantashilatva anandapad ananda anananda padadgatah anananda mahananda kalatita tatopi sah mukta ityuchyate yogi turyatita padam gatah. Having obtained the imperishable condition in that state, Turiya, or the fourth state of consciousness, whoever has departed from the abode devoid of bliss, that is waking dream and deep sleep, on account of habituation to absolute bliss, and then transcended the parts of no bliss as well as great bliss, that yogin is spoken of as liberated and gone to the abode beyond Turiya. Note, when the fourth state of consciousness of the Turiya is attained, the yogin abides in his own real nature, which is being consciousness bliss. He becomes liberated while living. Even this state is transcended ultimately in the state called Turiyatita, or beyond Turiya. This is the absolute state of undivided consciousness entered into on liberation without the body.
Liberation without the body means when the body of the Mahatma drops away. But Shankar would say every man of wisdom is liberated beyond the body because he's identified with his self. That's the mark of a man of knowledge. I am not the body. I never was in the body. I'm already liberated beyond the body. We have to nuance this. Now, as we go into this section of the marks of the Jivan Mukta, the liberated soul, we have to understand, many scriptures have this. Probably the most famous is the Stita Prajna Purusha section in chapter 2 of the Gita, the last, 18 verses. These are not to be used to be checking out other people. Here's the list. We see if Swami so-and-so meets them, or Guruji there meets them. No. They are for our own use always. So the man of wisdom manifests these effortlessly. But you and I can practice them. In Hamlet, Hamlet says to his mother when he finds out, when they discuss about how awful her behavior has been, he says, assume a virtue if you have it not. That's good yoga. Doesn't mean being phony. It means we endeavor to practice these qualities of head and heart. So it's never to be used to judge other people. It's pointless. You can't tell what the state of mind is in another person. Only one man of knowledge can really recognize them. All right, next verse.
Drishya darshana nirmukta yanubhuti anamaya tam avashtam yatishtatvam saushuktim tam bhajasthitim. You remain resting upon that perception which is free from unhappiness and liberated from the seen and the seeing. Resort to that state of profound repose.
So, knowing that I am what's real, and the phenomenal world is Nitya, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Nitya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is fake news. We stay empty. Watch it. Don't have to be afraid of it. Watch the news. Inside, the yogi knows all this is Leela. It's just the play of Maya. God's in charge. Staying empty, letting all the sensory data just pass through. Best we can. Swami used to call it staying tuned up, keeping the mind tensely introverted, abiding in the self. Next verse.
न मोक्षो न भस पृष्ठे न पाताले न भूतले सर्वाशा संक्षय चेतः क्षयो मोक्ष इतीष्यते. Liberation or final emancipation from transmigratory existence is not on the other side of the sky, nor in the netherworld, nor on the surface of the earth. The destruction of the thinking mind on the termination of all desires is regarded as liberation.
Yes. So when we say the destruction of the thinking mind, it is not some state of enfeeblement. It's not that you're sitting in the corner drooling in your diaper. No. The mind consists of three fundamental thoughts. I think I'm a person. I'm convinced there's some goal to be achieved. That goal only takes two forms. Fix the world or fix me. And the third element is struggle. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. This is the thinking mind that's referred to here. This is the essence of samsara, the suffering of the world. That's all there is to it. There's three ideas. These are the ones to be removed. Presence of thought in and of itself is not problematic. But the man of knowledge who's removed those three ideas knows that all of mind, all of name and form, gross objects, subtle thoughts and feelings are fundamentally illusion. Swamiji used to say the mind commits harakiri, psychic suicide. The mind quits believing its own stupid nonsense. It's great peace. It's great. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to be accomplished. Sarvamaya, Sarvam. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next.
Moksho me spiti chintantah chakachet utthitam manah manothe manasyuchaihi bandha samsariko dridha. Let there be liberation for me. If such a thought is caused within, the mind is raised or brought into existence. The springing up of thinking in the mind, on the springing up of thinking in the mind intensely, the bondage of worldly existence becomes firm.
So this is again an advanced teaching. Going back to the prior verse, the idea that he's getting at is liberation is not over yonder. The self is already liberated. In the beginning, the engine for our practice is our mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation. But once you're clear of the nature of yourself, and you can easily enter into that self-abidance, then we give up the burning desire for liberation. Here's the self, here's the little ego. It keeps thinking, oh, I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. Aha, aha, aha. Now I'm realized. Everybody else, touch my feet. Is it like that? I want to be realized. I want to be realized. Let go, let go, let go. The ego doesn't get there. You quit asking the stupid questions. Have I got it? Have I realized yet? Who is it who's worried about that? Drop it. No personal sense of self is real. Mark of the man of wisdom is that he's given up kartavya, obligatory actions, the jonesing. Need to go somewhere, get something, achieve something. Even liberation. Now, we don't give this teaching to beginners or even intermediate students, because the trap is to rationalize your suffering. Oh, I'm not supposed to meditate. That's just, a desire. I'm not supposed to practice. That's just a desire. I don't want to quit my bad habits. That's just another desire. So I think I'll just get loaded. That's just an illusion. I'm miserable, but that's just an illusion. You end up using false Vedantic logic to rationalize your suffering. A lot of the neo-Advaitins get caught up in this very nihilistic place. And it's because they have no samadhi. The mark of the man of wisdom is his mind does not extrovert into the world. Even though he may be seen to be acting in the world, it's never serious business anymore. Any thoughts on this? All right, one more.
Vanvadoshabhayat muktah tirna samsara sagarah prapnuttama vishrantihi labdha labdha pashaspadah. Be liberated from the fear of the evils of pairs of opposites, with the ocean of worldly existence passed over. Unsurpassed repose won, and the unattainable supreme abode attained.
Yes.
Oh, so I think I may have.
Did you skip one?
Yes, I skipped one. Atmanyatite sarvasmat sarvabhute thabatate bandha kaschava moksho nirmulam maranam kuru. In the self, which is beyond all definition, which has become everywhere or spread everywhere, what is bondage or what is liberation? So eradicate thinking or destroy the thoughts which veil the self.
So when the mind has been stunned into silence, thoughts of bondage and liberation don't even occur. Don't try to be a realized or liberated person. Know that you are Brahman and drop your concern. Everything else. And now, is the next verse the last one in this section?
No, there are a lot more.
Okay, then we'll stop here for tonight. Any thoughts? What verse are we on for next time?
32, 33.
32, 33. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.